Welcome to this explainer. If you're a manager, or maybe a management student gearing up for the workforce, you already know that leadership development is just a massive industry. But today, we're going to dive into a revolutionary, evidence-based approach to developing future leaders that completely flips the script on traditional education.
Take a second and really think about your own training and experiences so far. Does standard management training actually make leaders worse? I mean, is it possible that the very tools we use to train managers are unintentionally creating these bureaucratic, almost robotic leaders? Management expert Henry Mintzberg hit the nail on the head here. He points out that standard programs focus way too much on instrumental, measurable skills, and focusing solely on those cognitive tools can lead to what researchers call skilled incompetence. It's this crazy phenomenon where managers actually learn to emotionally check out, suppress their feelings, and hide behind routine behaviors just to avoid taking true responsibility or facing conflicts with their coworkers.
Section 1. A radical approach. Art-based training. So, if the standard formulas are failing us, what actually works? Let's see how a completely different methodology was put to the test.
Okay, let's look at this study setup because it's pretty fascinating. Romanowska and colleagues proposed a total paradigm shift, training leaders using avant-garde theater instead of textbooks. They matched up managers from all sorts of different sectors and randomly split them into two groups. Over a 10-month period, these groups went through totally different intervention programs. Crucially, Romanowska and colleagues tracked their psychological and subordinate-rated data not just during the program, but for 18 months to see the true long-term effects. One group got the standard, conventional training, while the experimental group was thrown into an art-based intervention called shibboleth.
Section 2. Defining metrics. How to measure success. Now, before we look at the actual interventions, we got to figure out exactly what we're evaluating, right? How do you measure good leadership in a rigorous scientific study? Let's look at the core traits Romanowska and colleagues measured.
First up is sense of coherence. To translate this academic term into practical stakes for you out there in the management trenches, this is basically your fundamental stress resilience. It's your ability to look at a totally chaotic, unpredictable situation and still view the world as comprehensible, manageable, and meaningful. It's all about keeping that holistic view during a crisis instead of just panicking.
Next, we have agreeableness. Now, hold on, don't misunderstand this one. It doesn't just mean being a pushover or a nice manager. It's actually a vital pro-social metric that predicts deep emotional intelligence, empathy, and compassion. It measures how ready you are to step up and take responsibility for others when dealing with really messy, real-world team dynamics. And on the flip side, they measured laissez-faire leadership. You can think of this as the ultimate management fail. It's a highly destructive behavior where leaders simply dodge their duties, freeze up on hard decisions, and completely fail to support their subordinates. It is pure bureaucratic indifference, and it allows workplace stress to just escalate unchecked.
Section 3. Art versus convention. A training showdown. All right, we've got our metrics in place. Let's pit these two completely different training environments against each other over that 10-month study.
This right here is the crucial point of comparison. On the conventional side, you have exactly what management students are used to, right? Lectures, ready-made solutions, cognitive tools, and a huge focus on self-improvement. But look at the Shibboleth program. It was radically different. There were literally no lectures on management. Instead, this group experienced experimental theater, intense avant-garde music, and poetry covering the most extreme human experiences you can think of, from genocide and abuse of power to love and courage. They were plunged into intense, highly ambiguous performances with absolutely no direct link to business, followed by totally undirected reflection.
Section 4. Surprising results. The data revealed. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. How does listening to poetry and weird music possibly make you a better manager than studying organizational behavior? Well, the results speak for themselves.
This data is the absolute aha moment of this explainer. Romanowski and colleagues tracked these leaders at the 12 and 18-month marks. Look at the art-based group. Their stress resilience went up, their pro-social empathy went up, and that destructive laissez-faire behavior dramatically went down. Now check out the conventional group. Not only did their empathy flatline, but their stress resilience actually dropped, and their laissez-faire avoidant behavior increased. The conventionally trained managers literally regressed in both resilience and responsibility.
And here's the kicker. This wasn't just all in their heads. The subordinates themselves rated the art group leaders as taking more responsibility and doing a way better job coping with stress.
Meanwhile, the conventional leaders actually got worse in the eyes of their own teams. The people on the ground absolutely felt the tangible, positive impact of the art-based training.
Section 5. Why Art Works, the Psychological Shift. For the analytical thinkers in the audience, we really need to unpack the why here. Why on earth did a seemingly random Theorell program completely wipe the floor with standard management tools?
This quote sheds a ton of light on the psychological mechanism at play. As Viktor Shklovsky points out, and as cited by Romanowska and colleagues, standard training relies heavily on checklists, formulas, and rigid routines. But art forces you to drop those stereotypes. It shatters that automatic perception and forces you, as a leader, to actually see the complex, messy, nuanced reality right in front of you, rather than just blindly applying a rigid framework.
So, how does this actually translate to handling your teams? Why did Shibboleth succeed? First, it handed them zero ready-made solutions. It forced these managers into a direct confrontation with pure ambiguity. It evoked really powerful emotions, like compassion and courage, rather than just safe, analytical thought. And it required synthetic thinking to connect fragmented, complex ideas. Dealing with the totally unstructured ambiguity of poetry and tragedy built the real-world muscle for these managers to handle turbulent, painful workplace conflicts without just running for the hills.
Section 6. Future Takeaways. Actionable Advice. Let's bring these insights directly into your day-to-day reality. How can you apply this research starting right now? If you're a management student or an active leader, here is your playbook to avoid that skilled incompetence. First, you've got to recognize the limits of textbook formulas. You just can't solve human complexity with a checklist. Second, go expose yourself to complex, emotionally challenging art. Force yourself to step outside that sterile corporate bubble. Third, practice navigating ambiguity. When a crisis hits, try sitting with the discomfort for a minute without rushing to a ready-made solution. And finally, focus on truly, deeply understanding the perspectives of others, rather than obsessing solely over your own professional development.
To wrap this explainer up, I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought to chew on. Are you treating the complex human challenges in your organization as mere technical problems? Really think about that as you go back to your teams and your studies. True leadership is not just a formula. It demands deep human capacity. And sometimes, the absolute best way to build that capacity is to shut the textbook and open your mind to the arts.